Okay, very good. Well, we're recording. So welcome everyone. I'm sorry we had a glitch in Facebook with the app for Zoom connecting with Facebook. However, we're just recording this and we've gone live. And today my guest is Joy Loverde. I've known Joy, gosh, probably 10 years
Yeah,
at least,
yeah,
something
at
like
least.
that.
Yeah.
And Joy, I became aware of Joy because she wrote a book many years ago. Is that about 10 years ago? The Elder Care Planner?
Well, the Elder Care Planner, the last edition just came out in October. The first edition came out in 1985.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're talking, you might have been aware of the second or third edition of that book, and the fourth edition just came out last month.
Yes, and that was at the time that I was caring for my parents. And that
Mm-hmm.
was the early 2000s is when I first learned about your book and you. So
Yeah.
it's been a
Yes.
while.
It sure has, and I know I am meeting up with people who have been following me for the past 30 years, and we all talk about how much everything has changed.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And that's what I want to talk with you about too.
Yeah.
And in addition to the Complete Eldercare Planner, Joy has also authored another book called Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old? And that one really hit the spot for me because that's my question. Who will take care of me when I'm old? And that kind of kicked off my own life plan and really thinking through some of the issues and care concerns that my sisters and I helped our parents with. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
so that,
Carol, I remember you were one of the first early adopters of the Facebook member type of organizing elder orphans, because that was what the term was. This, we're talking now 2016. And there you were, you jumped right on it. You saw that this was an enormous question. And then you took it upon yourself, which was the best thing, to alert others that no one's really alone. Come to my Facebook. It's called Elder Orphans. You're in charge. And we get people together, and you started getting people talking about it, as soon as my book and other books, your book came out, and then we started to create a dialogue around who is going to take care of us.
yeah. And I'm still working on it.
Oh yeah, it's never over. We know that.
Yeah, it's never over. As a matter of fact, which is what we're going to talk about today,
Yeah.
is caregiving challenges and our opportunities as for solo agers. As we grow older, what are some of our challenges, which I think a lot of us are aware of? However, what are some of the opportunities at the same time? So, kind of as setting up our conversation, Joy, who will take care of me is a new way of thinking about solo aging. And I can remember when both my parents died, I tell this little short story, but I was on a walk and I was crying because I was missing both of them terribly. And all of a sudden it just occurred to me, oh my gosh, that was a lot of work.
Mhm.
And oh my gosh, who's going to do that for me? I was like, it just slammed me because taking care of mom and dad was, it took three daughters, their three daughters, to care for them. And even then it was huge. It was so big because both of them were so ill. And my dad had Alzheimer's. So, we don't really think about others who need our help, especially as solo agers. However, I do because I live around a lot of older adults like me who don't have either family or they live far away. But so I think it's really important that we start thinking about, who's going to look at me or to me for care. In addition to asking, well, how can we kind of marry the two together? Who will look out for me at the same time as how can I help others that
You
are
know,
me?
you're absolutely right. Whenever I'm in a group of solo agers and I bring up the topic of caregiving, it's like, what are you talking about? I don't ask that question. And so your opportunity to allow this conversation is to say, but we all have to think about both sides of the coin. Because as long as we are in a relationship with someone that we really care about and we're not related to them, it'll naturally come into our lives that caregiving will be another responsibility that we have toward each other. But it takes some very interesting twists and turns. It's not simple, and we're often not thinking about it, and that's why you and I are having this conversation.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about you, Joy, is that you seem to really, well, of course you do, because you don't have children to look out for you. And you are in an environment similar to me where you're seeing others need your help as well.
Yeah, well, I may not talk about my daughter very much, but I do have a daughter. But you're right. I don't consider her my caregiver.
Hmm.
Because I know how busy she is. And she and I do not live in the same state. I live in Chicago. She lives in Colorado. And so I naturally do not think about adult children as being the answer to anything. As much as they would like to help, I have a lot of evidence when I go around and I talk to groups of family caregivers and solo agers that the adult children are so stressed out and they have so many responsibilities that we have to be responsible for ourselves. So,
Yes. And that kind of so to kind of really dive into thinking about others, ourselves, uh, can you give me your definition of care?
yeah, I'm glad you asked that because care in the sense of physical care is not really a given. And the reason I know this is because my mother is a perfect example. 92, healthy as can be, died in her sleep. Boom. Not a day of the kind of care that we may be used to, the kind of care that you were used to giving to your parents. So, what I mean by the definition of care is it's beyond physical, it's also intellectual, social, and spiritual. And we all know what it was like. Let me give you an example. During COVID, many of us were isolated physically well, but where did we start to need attention? It was the other parts, our emotional well-being. How were we going to be social? Our spirituality, whatever that means to you. So my definition of care has 4 parts. It's physical, intellectual, social, and spiritual. And that, by the way, comes from a study by the MacArthur Foundation. And they did a 10-year study and proved without a doubt that we need all 4.
Yeah, absolutely. And so can you name those again? Spiritual.
Sure.
Yeah.
So wellness, according to the definition of wellness, physical, intellectual, social, and spiritual. All 4. Has to
Yes.
have all 4.
Yes. Yeah, that's interesting because I can even see that expanding a little bit as well. For in different aspects. I
Oh,
guess as you
sure.
start to dig into each
Hmm.
one of them.
Right. Like the intellectual one also covers purposeful living. Like
Absolutely.
intellectually,
Oh,
we
got
ask
it.
ourselves, what am I doing here?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, right, right. And what gives you the kind of purpose of getting up in the morning, getting you started,
Mhm.
getting you up and out of your bed each morning? I like to think of purpose that way too. You know, a reason for being excited about life, right? You know,
Exactly.
and so what is the significance of longevity as it relates to caregiving?
Well, this is when I woke up regarding aging solo and caregiving, because eventually, if we live long enough, we will all be solo agers. So now we are living the life of people who are around us, who are also aging with us. So the significance of longevity is that as long as we are in a relationship with other people that we truly care about, the caregiving never ends. Their longevity and caregiving is related.
Yeah, that reminds me of Rosalind Carter or Rosalind Carter. Didn't she say everyone will experience caregiving? Either you've been one, will be one, or need one, or need a caregiver, and or maybe you have been a caregiver. But
Mm-hmm.
caregiving has and will touch each of our lives, and so will solo aging. Will touch
Exactly.
each of our lives.
That's right. So longevity is the thread that holds it all together. The longer you live, the more we get left behind, and the more we have to be surrounded by people, and then we'll all need care together. It's just an amazing existence that never really happened until the turn of the century, because people weren't living this long. But I don't know about you, but I know people who are 107, 110. And just think, those people probably had a steady diet of butter and no exercise. And I mean, just a whole different lifestyle. And then we're coming up the pike and we're, lifting weights and have a totally different lifestyle. How the heck long are we going to live?
I don't want to
Crazy.
know. Yeah, as a matter of
That's
fact,
right.
I just had my appointment with my doctor just last week, and everything looks good. And he said, "Wow, I think you have longevity in your life." And I said, "Well,
Hmm.
I hope not too much."
Hmm. That's right. I mean, it's not a goal of mine either. I don't, I, I
Right.
just, yeah.
Yeah, so I really want to get into solo aging and the things we all need to start thinking about in terms of elder care and planning for that. So, your fourth edition of the Complete Eldercare Planner, can you tell us, why the fourth edition? And because
Yeah.
you had mentioned that things keep changing, and they do keep changing.
Well, people were buying the third edition. The copyright date on that book is 2009. Now, Carol, when I say 2009, the world was a totally different world than it is today, right? But
Yes.
what I didn't like was that people were continuing to buy the third edition because they were so desperate for information. And my publisher and I had a conversation, and I said, I can't sleep at night knowing that I could write the next edition of the book. It needs to be written. And they gave me the green light, and I spent the past 2.5 years researching, rewriting the entire book, pretty much. So what's the number one difference in this edition, and a clear distinction for what's going on in the world today in the world of caregiving, is that other books and other resources talk about caregivers like it's one size fits all, and they don't differentiate between the different needs. So caregivers are not the same. There are younger caregivers who must do caregiving different than the older caregivers. There are wealthy caregivers. There are not wealthy caregivers. There are solo ager caregivers, there are LGBTQ plus caregivers, and then there are caregivers who are friends, and so many other distinctions. This book separates all of them and has separate plans for caregivers who have special needs. So that would be all of us. So that is one big difference in this book. And then the other thing is, since 2009, is our assumption that there are care workers available no longer exists. There are no care workers. We no longer can pick up the phone and say, hey, can you get somebody over here tomorrow to take care of mom? That doesn't exist anymore, Carol. The care worker shortage, these businesses are having a heck of a time having people work for them. So the new edition teaches readers how to forge new partnerships that will create a whole different new set of partners and people we hire or volunteers to help us in our caregiving needs. This had to be totally how we get care now has totally changed.
So can you talk about that? Can you give us an example of what that looks like in terms of, because caregiving has changed. I mean, in terms of caregivers, you're right. They're either leaving the industry or because they're not getting paid and really respected and for their time and effort or what have you. But the shortage is certainly affecting the whole industry. So can you tell us how to shift our mindset?
Sure. So first of all, we have to know that the care worker shortage is real. Going from that point, and this is just one example, there are many things we can do, but one strategy is we have to look at where we live differently than we did before, because where we live matters. So from there, what is the support system? And again, not thinking that we're necessarily talking about needing physical care. We need that intellectual, social, and spiritual component when we think about where we're going to live. So this is a perfect example. I dedicate an entire new chapter to all the different kinds of housing options that didn't even exist before. So this is what I mean. When we think of getting care, getting help, we have to go to, well, where do I live?
Yes.
That's a new distinction and go
Yes.
from there.
Yes.
And you know that because you tell us so often about the story of you were in the suburbs and you're like, no, this isn't going to work. And so even from a caregiving point of view, the way that you chose to your new environment will have everything positive for you on how you are going to be a caregiver for others and others are going to be a caregiver for you.
Yes.
Housing is a new distinction in the book.
Yeah, I'll absolutely, and even in my book, I talk about the top 10 domains, and that would be health, housing, housing and location, along with legal, financial matters, and of course, social connections, building your own support network, transportation, and then life purpose, and then a few others. But what I want to emphasize is because housing, once you start working on one, for example, when I started working on where am I going to live, how do I solve this problem of social as well as support, as well as housing and location? Well, that for me, my answer was living in an urban area in a high rise, because it really opened the doors to solve all the issues, social connections, support network, which I build in, caregiving for each other, right?
Right.
So once
right.
and that's what I love talking about this because it gave me so much hope, because when I moved in here, I thought, wow, not only have I solved these little issues, social and support and the location, but it's also helping my health because where I started walking, walking more. I started walking my errands, which got me out of the house, meeting new people.
Right.
So I get really excited.
I could tell. And from a caregiving point of view, if you, I should say when you are called upon to be a caregiver, you won't be getting in your car. You'll be taking the elevator
That's
to go
right.
take care of your friend.
Yeah, well,
That's a
there's
big
one
difference.
down the hall, right?
There you go. There you go.
As a matter of fact, that happened to me the very first year I lived here. I cut my finger. Well, I was cooking and cut my finger, and it wasn't just a little cut either. And I grabbed a towel and ran to her apartment,
Mm-hmm.
which was just down the hall. And I
Yeah.
said, "Oh no, I cut my finger," because it really scared me. And
Yeah.
she was there, and she took me to the urgent care center to get
Beautiful.
stitches. So yeah, I love it. So, what do you think that solo agers can expect today, can expect caregiving, or when they can expect caregiving? I think we really talked about that. It can happen anytime, right?
Oh, yeah. Because remember, whenever anyone says the word care, I'm looking at it from four different points of view. You might
Yes,
have a friend who comes to you and says he or she is so depressed. I mean, we never really know. So the answer is if you have people in your life who care about you and you care about them, caregiving is already begun. So unfortunately, most people follow a medical model and they say things like, well, there's nothing to do. Carol's fine. I'm off to the races. But the thing is if you wait until 2 o'clock in the morning when someone calls you, it's almost already too late to have the kinds of discussions we need to have with each other. So I don't do the medical model. I do the social model, which is more about checking in on a regular basis. In fact, I can tell you specifically things that we need to discuss with our solo ager friends as it relates to caregiving.
yes, please.
Okay, so the first thing I like to do is say, get out your cell phone and look at the contacts. Who do you think's going to land on your doorstep? Look at the contacts on your phone. That's number one. Once you've identified who that might be, here's a tough one. The next thing to talk about or to uh, bring up as best you can is how do you plan to pay for long-term care or any kind of long-term longer life? Do our friends have enough money? Wouldn't the worst thing in the world be, Carol, that they call you and they say, I need your help. And then, oh, by the way, I don't have any money. I mean, you don't want that to happen. So we need to be the adults in the room and say, first of all, we decide whether or not we will be caregiving for that particular person. I tell many people there's no commitment. You don't have to. If you want to say no, then you have the conversation anyway. And you say, I'm wondering who you're going to call if and when something happens and you need more attention. Because I'm sorry, it can't be me. And that we have to have even that discussion. But the first thing we have to find out from each other is, all right, if something happens to you, what's your financial situation? I need to know because if you're going to need somebody to come in and help you vacuum or do something, do you have enough money? And if you don't, let's go to a financial planner, you and me, and let's go sit down and talk about what is needed to finance a longer life. So money comes up all the time. And as much as we love the people in our lives, we can't dip into our own pockets. We have to find out if our friends have no money and then begin the process of talking about Medicaid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes,
It's a sad fact, but we cannot jeopardize our own financial future because because we weren't brave enough to bring up the conversation ahead of time.
absolutely. I have a subgroup here in Dallas, and we met Sunday, a few of us did, and talked about housing, how expensive housing is.
Mhm.
And one person said that, well, and let me put it this way. I suggested that we start opening up to the idea of sharing our home, getting a roommate, and renting a home together, because we have to really consolidate our resources. And however, there's a lot of legal things that will go into that as well, because there are a lot of conversations that you have to have if you plan to go in that direction. But my point being that many of us as solo agers, we love our independence and we love our privacy and alone time. And you can find all of that even if you share a home, because I used to share a home in California when I was younger, and California was expensive, right? Expensive to live. But and so that's something I really emphasize to individuals is we may have to give up something in order to have something, have peace of mind, right? You
Mhm.
may have to give up your privacy, a small portion of your privacy or your aloneness.
Yes, yes. Now it's depending on what kind of culture you come from, Carol. I'm Italian. We don't cherish our independence. We are very community minded. We pile up three people to a bedroom. We think nothing of it. I mean, so so
That's funny.
it's not that hard for everybody. I feel very lonely when I'm alone. Many people don't, and I
Right.
travel a lot for a living, and when I'm in a hotel room, I'm usually very weepy. But
Oh,
because it's cultural. So hopefully you'll have an Italian in the group. And that
yes.
person, yeah, you never know. But you did say something very important that people need to hear, and that is the legalities of taking on responsibility as a caregiver for someone else. So the first thing you got to do is find out what the money well looks like. But the second thing you have to do is go straight to the lawyer and discuss your plans and find out what are your obligations here? What are you getting yourself into? Because it's a legal nightmare, especially if you take someone to, let's say, in an emergency situation, and you take them to, let's say, a nursing home or a hospital, and you're signing those documents like crazy because you're under duress. You can't do that, and you don't know you can't do that. So, first the money guy, second the lawyer, if you're going to start to team up and be a caregiver.
Well, that's interesting about, let's say in a hospital emergency, about the paperwork. So
Hmm.
I guess you're kind of alerting people to be really
Yes,
aware of what they're signing. Yes.
exactly. But there's legal documents that have to be, you have to be a legal decision maker.
Yes.
So
True.
you don't. So if you take a friend to the hospital, you don't necessarily sign anything, but you don't know that you're afraid, and it's crazy time.
Mhm.
There's so much to discuss ahead of time in an emergency situation, and that's why I'm pleading with everybody to have a conversation with their friends and people they're not related to, but they care a lot about, to find out what are you getting yourself into.
Yes. Yeah. These are really some great ideas and questions and considerations for all of us to think about. So I need to get your book.
Okay,
The complete,
you're
the
the best.
complete guide, the complete guide.
The Complete Elder Care Planner, fourth edition. Don't buy the third one.
Okay, is it on
The
Amazon now, or where can
Oh,
people
it's
find it?
all over the world. Random House
Okay,
is my publisher. So if people are listening to this and they live in Australia, India, all over the world, it's
okay.
available.
Very good. Yeah, because it sounds like there's a lot of valuable information and forethought that you put into this book, because things
Mhm.
have changed so much.
Yes.
Really have. Um, so what other questions do we need to ask about caregiving, especially with our friends or as we're building a support network? Because I think it's so important that we have our own kind of, it doesn't even matter if you have like 3 people in your support network.
Oh, no, it never matters. If you have one, that's
Yeah.
plenty. But other considerations is, and this is where I hear it all the time, and I know you do too. Caregivers are always asking themselves, how can I take care of myself while I'm doing caregiving? And it's so intense. We know this. So what it comes down to is the ability to manage change. We're constantly going to be managing a situation that's outside of ourselves. And this is where my other book comes in, Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old? Because I have a managing change worksheet in
Nice.
there. And Carol, I use it all the time because, change is what's going to get us, and we can manage it. So while we're busy being good friends and we care about everybody, we have to continuously learn how to manage the transition of all that's happening to us at the same time. Those two worlds we live in, aging solo and caregiving. So managing change is something we can learn to do right now, because every day it's just going to come even faster and harder. And we can do it. We don't have to fall apart.
Yes, or run away.
Right.
Right.
Go to the circus. No.
So tell me, can you give us 1 or 2 tips on managing change?
Yeah. So one of the things is I ask myself, okay, what's different? Actually putting it in black and white. What's different in my life now? And by putting it into this black and white column, okay, before it was like this and now it's like this. I don't know what happens, but it calms me down. It just reminds me, when I look at what's different now, is that is not a big monster. It's just a fact. And it calms me down because I can see in black and white. Oh, I see. It used to be like this and now it's like that. And then I go, okay, I got it. So not only am I saying goodbye to something, I'm also saying hello to something else. And it helps me calm my fears. And another thing I do is I say, okay, what would I tell a friend who's going through the same thing? And then I try to become a friend to me.
Nice, nice.
But I found that if I work this worksheet because there's something in the process of writing things down that helps us get out of our head and make it, it's always worse up here, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when
Yes,
you put it on paper, we're adults. We've been through everything. We could get through this too.
right.
And we're smart. Like you said, solo and smart.
That's right.
and that's and that's a testament to what you have created. This, you're solo and you're smart and you can do this.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and I agree. Just don't fall for the fear.
Right.
don't allow it to eat you up, because it will if it can.
You betcha. Well, we do
Okay.
it to ourselves.
Yes, yes, we
Anyway,
do. Are there any questions from our guest on this call? We can just open it up to a Q&A real quick before we end our discussion. If your mic is on mute and you have a question, or you can just put it in the chat and I'll ask Joy myself. So either way. Okay, it doesn't look like they're keeping their mics on mute, so that's good. Well, Joy, thank you so much for joining us, because it's such a rich topic.
mhm.
Many of us Wendell's joining us.
Oh,
Hi,
good for
Wendell.
her.
I'm sorry that we're about to end, but thank you for joining us. Well, she did, and then she left. So,
Okay,
but,
that's cool.
so anyway, thank you, Joy. I appreciate
You're
your time.
welcome.
It was great. So how can people get in touch with you if they had other questions or wanted to buy your book, her book? So tell us again how to get hold of
You
you.
bet. So the Complete Eldercare Planner, 4th edition, and then the other one is Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old. My website is elderindustry.com.
Great. And it's Joy Loverde. Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much, Joy.
Thank you, Carol. This has been a pleasure. Happy holidays.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You too. And
Thank you.
everyone else.